The White Room. I'm standing in the White Room. The White Room.
Yes, it's certainly white, all right, no question.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Jonathan Creek podcast, where we're not really in a white room, are we?
No, but you wonder, would our listeners be as awestruck to stand in this room here where we record the podcast?
No.
You're probably right.
I know I am. It's not a place for quiet contemplation, I don't think.
Very rarely.
How are you?
I'm not too bad. I've got a sore finger.
How did you do that?
Well, it's really not a very dramatic story.
A magic trick that went wrong? The finger guillotine?
Let's say that. Let's say it was a magic trick that went wrong.
I'm now pondering what else it could be. Let's not go there.
No. How are you, Gerry?
Yeah, alright.
Better than last time?
Yeah, I'm better than last time.
That's good.
An enjoyable mystery this week, Ian, although we'll chat about it later. I think there are a number of flaws, a number of inconsistencies.
You might say the plan was a bit chancy.
That's a good word. A word from the Columbo podcast. Very chancy. And those chancy elements shall be discussed in due course.
Absolutely.
You fancy doing a little bit of requesting before we begin this week? Get it over and done with?
Well, yes, because at this stage of the podcast, the early days, it's when it can make the most difference if you guys rate, review and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or iTunes if you're using a desktop computer. It really would help more folk find the show. It would be a big benefit to us and hopefully get some more chat and buzz going around the podcast, and we'd really appreciate it if you could do that. If you want to talk to us about the show, you can get hold of us at jonathancreekpodcast.com. There's a post about each episode, but also on social media. We're at Creek Podcast on both Facebook and Twitter.
Well, with that out the way, why don't you provide a synopsis of this week's episode? Do you have something for us?
As always, Gerry.
What do you have?
A summary.
Crack on.
In No Trace of Tracy, Jonathan and Maddie investigate when a girl goes missing after visiting Roy Pilgrim, one of Jonathan's musical heroes. Pilgrim is handcuffed to a radiator and apparently present when Tracy Cook enters through his French doors, but denies having ever seen her. There is a toad of evidence pointing to his guilt, but can Jonathan figure out an alternative explanation before Pilgrim is forced to forget his freedom?
Fantastic, Ian. How long did it take you to come up with that?
Hours.
I'll bet.
I've tried every amphibian pun in the book.
And that was the one that leapt out at you.
That was the one.
This week, we begin in a bedroom, the eponymous Tracy's bedroom.
Yes, she's watching Roy Pilgrim and Edwin Drood.
Yeah, so we cut between her getting ready, she's getting done up, whilst watching a Drood concert from 1979, and at the same time we see one of the members, Roy Pilgrim, I think he's the lead guitarist.
I thought he was Electric Fiddle or something
like that. He is in the present day running back to his mansion, doing a bit of jogging.
Yeah, he's not at the Reading Rock Festival any longer.
No, he's running with dumbbells, but not the type of dumbbells that you would have been designed to be used with running. You get more streamlined ones these days.
Yes, progress, you would call it perhaps. There's some good trivia about this band though. He was originally called Ray Pilgrim when they put this story together, and the band was called Mighty Joe Young.
A familiar name?
Well, it's a movie, obviously I think it's a Harryhausen movie, but apparently there was already a guitarist called Ray Pilgrim, so they had to change that, and there was already a group called Mighty Joe Young, so they went with a Dickens type name, and obviously Edwin Drood, Dickens' final novel, The Unfinished Mystery of Edwin Drood.
Now, this Drood are a typical pretentious prog rock band from the 70s in the style of Led Zeppelin, maybe Yes, things like that. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love a bit of Led Zeppelin, but it's pretentious.
And perhaps of its time.
You can see a bit of a Spinal Tap in there as well. We see that Tracy has a letter inviting her to meet her hero at 4 p.m. That's what she's getting ready for.
Yeah, the camera kind of hovers over this a little bit. We get to see, yes, on the 21st at 4 p.m.
Did you find this believable? So this is 97.
Yeah.
Britpop.
Yep.
You get a 16-year-old girl who should be into Jarvis Cocker and Damon Albarn from Blur, Liam Gallagher perhaps, if you like a bit of the Wild Man. Was it hugely believable that she would be so fascinated with some guy who is obviously now in his 50s?
I think it's absolutely believable.
You do?
I do. I think there's a wide range of... I don't think all 16-year-olds would fall into any one bracket, so there's always going to be one. It's not like she was selected at random.
Yeah.
In the story, she was chosen because she was a fan that wrote to him.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with her being a fan of the music, but to idolise this, who she must know is far too old for her, I find that slightly less plausible than just being a fan of the band.
There might be reasons for it.
Yeah, possibly. Quite creepy.
It's a bit weird.
We see Pilgrim. He approaches the back door of his house. He's being very cautious because he's discovered that it appears to have been broken into.
Well, you can see from halfway down his pathway that it's certainly open, and as he gets closer you can tell it's been broken into.
He enters and examines an open safe that had been hidden behind a painting, and while he's doing this, is struck unconscious with one of the dumbbells that he had been running with.
Well, we presume so, unless he's got others lying around his house.
No, we see him put that down.
Did we? Okay.
I think so.
The one thing I found a bit implausible about this, and also later scenes, is we've got this perfectly white carpet and nobody makes any footprints on it. He's been out jogging in a park.
Yeah.
And he comes in, doesn't take his shoes off, but there's no trail of footprints behind him. Nobody else's footprints appear in this room at any stage in this episode.
That's a good point, yeah. Hadn't thought of that. I've been looking at the bigger issues that I have, which we shall get to.
Product placement for the Scotch Guard industry.
Tracy, we see cheerily leaving her worried mother, who appears to know where she's going.
Yeah, I think she's told her mother what's happening.
I wouldn't be happy with that at all. Going to meet a rock star.
That would be kind
At
of weird.
her age, yeah, it'd be very... What I would say was, okay, you can go and meet him, but I'm coming with you.
Or meet him in a public place.
Yeah. It's not like these 70-year rock stars didn't have a reputation for this sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the mother's
Derelict in her duties as a mother.
Well, I was going to say her antenna would be up straight away since she heard about this proposed arrangement. Unless she was... she's not even sympathetic. She's quite clearly concerned.
Yeah. Tracy Cook was played by Heather J. Jones. She last appeared on screen in the children's TV show The Queen's Nose. Do you remember that one?
It rings a bell.
Yeah.
Too
old for
I
it.
can't remember exactly what happened. I think I was too old for it as well.
Yeah. She's also been in London is Burning, The Bill, The Vice, and Peak Practice, but I think she's retired from acting now.
Okay.
Back over to Pilgrim's house, and some time later, he awakens to discover that he has been handcuffed to a radiator.
He does, and he yells for help, and then, I love this bit, there's a phone that's just in reach, and you think what's going through his head, he's like, look at this mistake they've made.
It reminded me of the Saw movies, especially the first one.
Oh, with something basically that tempted you.
Yeah, well, the two of them are chained to radiators, I think, as
Right.
well.
Oh, the guy has to saw his own leg off or something in that movie, doesn't he?
Hey, spoilers. So, we see him check his watch, and it reads as being just after 12:30.
In the afternoon, yes.
We presume, yeah. We quickly go to the train station. We see a train pull up, and this is where the credits roll.
Yeah. Now, it's probably worth mentioning at this stage that this is the first episode with a different director from all the others so far, so that's maybe why we're getting a different approach to things like the credits.
Possibly, yeah. We see Tracy get off and is pointed in the direction of Pilgrim's house by some helpful chap.
Yeah, it's a weird sort of situation. You've got a train station that's also a level crossing.
Yeah, it was odd. It perhaps wasn't a train station, but they liked the...
It's like the crossings that will act that this is a train station.
Yeah. And we head back to Pilgrim's house. Still chained up, he is listening to Dance Macabre.
Well, this is interesting. He's listening to Classic FM, a direct competitor to the BBC's Radio 3.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think we get the time mentioned, don't we, on the radio? Or at least he seems to know what time it is from the radio.
Yeah, it's a CD Walkman with obviously an inbuilt radio.
AM, FM tuner.
Yeah. And we note that it is now 4 p.m.
Yeah, I quite like the way they did that. Obviously, the theme tune of the show kind of folded into his Walkman almost. It was just a continuation. It was really nicely done.
Nice touch. And we then hear what?
We hear a ribbit of some kind.
We do. And then there is the appearance of a frog in the room.
Quite an exotic looking frog.
It wasn't your common or garden variety.
I don't think so.
Outside, we see Tracy buzz in at the gate.
Now that must raise some suspicions for viewers.
Yes. When you were watching that, did you think, how did she get in? Who answered it?
Yeah, obviously, because...
Unless she had been given a code.
Well, no, she presses a buzzer, I think. But the other thing that you might think is, has his watch been changed? Is the time different from what he thinks it is?
So she enters whilst being watched by a group of lustful schoolboys who are waiting on their bus.
Bit pathetic looking little boys.
Yeah, but that's what you would do.
Probably.
They see her approach the door. I think it's the back door. I was always a little bit confused about where...
I think there's a little driveway around the other side that's much more welcoming.
Yeah. So they see her go up to the door and appear to go in just as their bus arrives and they disappear. She enters and the camera pulls back quite nicely in an intriguing manner and fades out.
Yes.
So we don't know what's happened.
Yeah, we got a shot before that of Pilgrim writing in a notebook. So we know he's awake.
It's the house next morning.
It's got a name.
What's that?
Bleak House. It's more Dickens.
Dickens, yeah.
Yeah.
There are cops there.
Yeah, they're looking for Roy. They've not been able to get an answer at the door.
And just then, his fiancée Francine arrives. It's 9 a.m. and they all enter together to find him still chained up to the radiator. And he gives his version of events, although Francine is none too sympathetic.
That's right.
She's not a likeable character.
She's not at all. You don't really see what the attraction is.
No. I think, in fact, it's said as much towards the end of the episode.
Yeah.
She wants to know where the pretty little thing he invited around for tea and crumpets is. Her mother is worried. She obviously believes that it's the type of thing that he would do.
Yeah, well, she doesn't certainly believe his version of events, does she?
No. Just then, the schoolboys are brought to the door and they recall what they saw. And things get worse for Pilgrim as a cop lays out the predicament that he is in.
Mr. Pilgrim, can you tell us where you were at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon?
Is this a joke? I haven't moved from this spot for 20 hours. I'm not Harry Houdini. Someone trying to be funny?
There's nothing funny about a missing person, Mr. Pilgrim. We know she left home yesterday morning for this address. It appears now she was seen by 6 eyewitnesses entering your house through this door at 4 o'clock as the school bus was arriving.
Someone's putting you on.
Mr. Pilgrim, a straight answer to the question, please. Did you let a 16-year-old girl named Tracy Cook into this house yesterday afternoon?
Look, I don't know what you guys are playing at, but let's lay this to rest now. I've been sat here staring at these 4 walls since midday yesterday till the moment you just arrived. And on my granny's grave, no one has come in through those French windows.
It's not the best alibi.
No, but I think that's important later on. I think that is something that Jonathan latches onto.
Absolutely.
Francine, she was played by Geraldine Alexander. She has starred in Miss Marple, Doctors, Shetland, EastEnders, Taggart, Coronation Street, Casualty, The Bill, Holby City and Doctor Who.
That's the full set.
Just about, bingo.
Hey.
Where do we go next?
Well, it's time to meet our eponymous hero and his cohorts.
Where is he this week?
In the back of a car.
He is. Maddie and Jonathan are on a scavenger hunt with Maddie's best friend, a feisty woman called Sheena.
And her boyfriend.
A muscular, large boyfriend, and Jonathan's sitting squashed in the back with him. He doesn't look too comfortable.
There's a bit of a man-spreading going on there. They appear to be wound up by the fact he's getting all the answers right.
Yeah, I would have thought that's why he's been brought along in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other reason. He's not dating Maddie. It's not like he's...
Well, in fairness, we do find out that perhaps there is an ulterior motive.
Well, perhaps.
So after trying unsuccessfully to work out the current clue, they have to admit defeat, and Jonathan immediately provides a solution. Can you remember what that was?
The one with the number plate?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says something when you look at it in the mirror. The number plate reverses to look like words. The C, I think, off the top of my head. THESCA, it looks like when it's backwards. So that puts them between two seas or something like that. And then
the age of the sea, how old is it?
Yes, and the answer is because it's an air-edge car.
Yeah.
That allows them to pinpoint the year they're looking for.
Yeah, I think Jonathan was a little bit better at providing a solution than we were.
Well, it's a stupid clue for a scavenger hunt.
Why?
No one's going to get that.
Jonathan did.
Yeah, because he's specifically written to be a smart arse.
I think I might have got it.
You think you would? Yeah, if you'd seen the episode first.
Yeah. Well, I had seen the episode before and I still couldn't remember.
As they pull away from this clue to head to the next one, a car seems to start following them.
Yes, it's been driven quite erratically.
And aggressively.
By Francine.
Yep, she's obviously in a hurry to get somewhere.
And she drives them off the road into a ditch. I
think that's quite illegal, but nothing seems to happen.
Yeah. The gang meet up with her, or certainly catch up with her shortly. And if it was me, I'd have been making a stern point to her.
I would have been contacting the authorities.
Grass.
Get a night in the cells.
We're at the pub.
Yes, this is where they see her, but beforehand they're having a conversation.
Yes, inside, Jonathan complains to Maddie about Sheena calling him abracadabra.
He doesn't like that. She's winding him up, I think.
Yeah, and Maddie suggests it's perhaps because she has a thing for him.
Well, certainly that she likes him.
That's what a thing is.
No, but it might not be a romantic thing. She might just like him for his camaraderie.
Sure.
Who knows?
Outside, the annoying Sheena teases him again about his job and asks him if Maddie has so far seen his magic wand.
It's not very subtle.
Nah. Conveniently, the pub is situated across the road from Francine's home, described as the little cow who ran them off the road by Maddie.
Absolutely. They see her arguing with Roy, who's showed up.
And break off their engagement.
Yeah, she chucks the ring away, but he pockets it and takes it with him.
We also hear her describe some of the evidence against him.
Yeah, she goes through it a little bit. They are quite far away, but it seems to be perfectly audible. Jonathan is surprised that he's the only one who recognises this man.
Yes, he was or is a fan of the band.
But nobody else has ever even heard of the band, let alone Roy Pilgrim, I don't think, from what I could pick up.
Yeah, I think their tastes were more Percy Sledge.
Slightly different tempo, you might say.
The first appearance of Jonathan's Windmill this week, and over breakfast, he reads an article about Pilgrim and the case before receiving a call, we presume, from Maddie.
I don't know. It was a call, but he doesn't. This has happened before. He doesn't specify who's on the phone.
I think it must be.
Perhaps.
We're back at Pilgrim's house, and he's been questioned by the police and, apparently, Maddie.
Yeah, but she can't get into her Ribena and has to get help from the cops.
Yeah. He explains to them that during his time trapped in the room, he wrote 3 songs and listened to Classic FM from 3 until 4. He was staring at the door and Tracy definitely did not enter. He also denies writing any letter inviting her around. Now, this is another issue. This is one I think we can discuss just now. Handwriting experts, I think, be able to prove that he didn't write that letter.
Probably.
I mean, they just copied it. But you can't just copy something. Even if you get it, to the average human eye, it might look similar. A handwriting expert would be able to identify that wasn't written by the same person.
But you might find that evidence is outweighed by the fact she went into his house when nobody else was there and then went missing.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, he admitted he was in the house. But yes, it certainly would be one of the factors that would be on the scale, tipping it one way or the other.
Yeah, sorry, but it's not just that you would disregard that letter then. If you could prove that the letter was faked, that in itself shows that someone else is involved.
But then, what's to say he didn't fake it by doing different handwriting from his own?
Why would he do that?
Because he was going to kidnap the girl. And he didn't want the letter pinned to him.
Yeah, but if you're going to kidnap a girl, you don't write a letter. You would type it, or you wouldn't just.
Yeah.
Because no, the handwriting is meant to look. You'd have to have an expert to say that it wasn't your handwriting.
Yeah.
So you don't try and copy your own handwriting. If you're trying, if you're going to kidnap a 16-year-old girl, you don't write her a letter in your own handwriting, in the style of your own handwriting.
That could be a really clever way of getting out. But you write it once and then you try and copy that first version. Yeah. So it's slightly different.
Yeah. That's far too convoluted. No, I think that if you can prove that the letter was a forgery, it's more than just one factor, and I think then you have to accept, okay, there are other people involved here.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, Roy Pilgrim. He was played by Ralph Brown, born in 1957. He's had quite a few, or certainly one, iconic role. He was in Whitnail and I.
I always want to call that Withnail and I.
Yeah, but it's not.
I know, that's how it's stuck in my head.
Also, The Phantom Menace.
Who was he in The Phantom Menace?
Don't know. Raki Rook, something like that, I don't know. Wayne's World 2, where he basically played a very similar character to the hippie stoner type from Whitnail and I.
Okay.
Alien 3, The Blacklist, Babylon, Legends, New Tricks, Cape Wrath, Nighty Night, Coronation Street, Lock, Stock, the TV series, Ivanhoe, and The Bill. He is also a member of the Brighton Beach Boys, which are a Beach Boys tribute band.
Which one's he?
He is the one that's not dead.
Helpful.
I don't know.
The police put this version of events to him at this stage, and he kind of holds his line. He says that, you know, as he was explaining to their colleague earlier, the only thing that came through those doors was the frog.
Yeah, and they all look at a sheepish Maddie at this point. Why?
Well, because she's obviously passed herself off to Roy as with the police.
Yeah, and to the police as his legal...
Yeah, well, what she's really done is just let them all assume.
Yes. The next thing we see is her notes and Ribena have been thrown in the fireplace.
Yeah, it's a bit harsh to burn her Ribena.
And she is thrown out the
unceremoniously.
door.
But on her car, a note.
Yes, from Jacob Flowers. And Jacob claims that Pilgrim is innocent. She then hears a twig break and someone appears to move off from the bushes behind her.
Yeah, it's a very lo-fi bit of sneaking around. The note says, Roy Pilgrim is a wronged man. We should not blacken him with suspicion, but trust in his innocence. Signed by Jacob Flowers. And then it mentions Hog's Belly Farm.
But we don't go to Hog's Belly Farm just now. We go back to Maddie's flat. Jonathan arrives to a smoke-filled home as Maddie cooks and he's to do a bit of firefighting.
Well, it turns out she's not the best cook in the world.
That's an understatement. Quite dreadful. Quite dangerous.
Yeah, especially with a can of petrol in the kitchen. Jonathan's naturally concerned.
Yeah, and he moves that out to the hallway.
They're talking about this case. She's obviously invited him over to talk about this case. It's once again one of these situations where it's not obvious why Jonathan wants to get involved, other than being a fan of the guy. Yeah,
well, I think there's a couple of factors here. I think, firstly, he is a fan of the guy, but he's obviously a fan of Maddie as well. I think he quite likes her company. So you combine that with the fact that he has a curious mind. You know, there's those three things there that would go some way to explaining why he is there.
Yeah, I mean, the issue of why Jonathan wants to get involved in the crimes has come up a few times in some of the reading that I've done in the book. Obviously, one of the reasons that Hugh Laurie eventually didn't take the role is because he couldn't understand why Jonathan was getting involved in these cases. And early versions of the first episode had a different motivation for him. They had his father apparently committing suicide, and Jonathan investigating that and finding out it was murder, and that gets him into the whole crime fighting thing, but they thought it was too close to the Batman crime fighting orphan.
I'm not sure if that's a problem.
I was going to say that's not the reason they should have done that.
Yeah, it was a dreadful idea and they've done well to dismiss it.
I think actually they also had Maddie being Jonathan's father's much younger partner.
Right.
And then after the father died, starting to take up the same level of interest in Jonathan as she does at the moment. That would have made it a far creepier.
That's why we have drafts and versions. You get there in the end.
We do. We get a bit of a time skip ahead and dinner's ready.
It is. So they're chatting about the case. She asks him if Pilgrim is capable of murder, although she has heard him sing. Evidence of the 6 schoolboys seem to point to his guilt, but Jonathan suggests that he may be sticking to his story because it's true. And I think that's what we touched on earlier. It's such a ridiculous position to take if you are lying.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so the options are, it is, from what we've seen, it is true, or he's been deceived into thinking it's true.
Yeah.
Which could have been done by manipulating the time that he thinks it is.
So as they eat, they talk about the letter written by Jacob.
So this is the guy, you reckon, Jacob Flowers, who stuck the note under my wiper. What's his connection with Pilgrim?
You heard of an American cult called the Creed of Eden?
Funnily enough, no.
Well, don't ask me what they're into, some kind of eco-religious thing. The world is God's garden, all life is sacred. It's easier for a rich man to enter a camel if he stands on a box. Well, this character is their grand prophet and founding father. And if you know your history of rock music...
Intimately.
Then you'll know it was during Edwin Drood's tour of the States in July '87 that Roy Pilgrim became a disciple of the Order, leading effectively to the breakup of the group and some fairly deadly solo albums about rainforests and dolphins.
So, Flowers is going to stick up for Pilgrim because they're buddies, or maybe he knows something else about all this that we don't. Don't scrape that off. It's meant to be that colour. It's Cajun. Blackened catfish.
Looks more like halibut to me.
Well, blackened halibut, then. I had to improvise. We have less of the pedanticism and just eat.
The word is pedantry.
As much as I really, really like that line, pedanticism's a much better word.
Should be used.
They should replace it. Did you get the Columbo reference at the start of the next scene?
Danziger?
I thought so.
Yes.
It must be.
Yeah, I think it should be. The Danziger was from the Bye Bye.
Well, there's more than one Danziger. I think
There was.
Troubled Waters was Danziger.
Yep.
And there may well have been a third or fourth Danziger elsewhere. We talked about that in the Columbo podcast, the reuse of names.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the ones that came up repeatedly.
Yeah, so we're at Pilgrim's house, and he is having a desperate call with his lawyer, Danziger. He knows he's in trouble.
He does. He thinks he's got another problem as well when he looks out his window.
He sees Jonathan and Maddie at his gate, and she notes that someone must have buzzed Tracy in, as we mentioned. She then pushes the button in front of a shocked Jonathan.
Yeah, well, he's a bit of a fanboy, isn't he?
Yeah, he thinks he can't meet his hero.
They always disappoint you. Unless you're a major podcast fan.
Yeah, I think people might be quite severely... Although I suppose if your expectations aren't high in the first place.
Exactly. Pilgrim asks what he needs to do to make them go away, and ultimately agrees to let them in.
Yes, because he has to accept that they are his only hope.
Oh, that was a terrible line.
Yeah, it's a bit...
For a start, he's just off the phone to his lawyer. Why would he even consider that they were his only hope?
Yeah. Suppose they're the only people that perhaps have indicated that they believe him. Or have they?
No.
No.
She came and sat in the interview, lied to him about who she was, got kicked out by the police, and that's the last he's heard of her.
But in his position, you're willing to listen to anyone who may be able to help you. So we're actually inside the White Room.
Yeah, we get one of these sort of displays of Jonathan's incredible brain power where he remembers Pilgrim's history better than Roy does himself.
Yes, he corrects Pilgrim on certain dates as he inspects the door and the room.
I half expected Pilgrim to come back with, well, if you can remember it, you weren't there.
He admits that he doesn't keep in touch with the other bandmates. He has more spiritual pursuits these days, apparently.
Apparently.
Maddie then mentions the ally he apparently has in Jacob, and he admits to being a patron for Hog's Belly Farm, or the commune at Hog's Belly Farm.
Yeah, and then he has to nip out for a moment.
Why?
Much to Jonathan's dismay.
Yes, what's he going to do, or what's he going to record?
He's about to record the Waltons that's about to start. Jonathan's pretty devastated.
See, I'm not sure I would be. It's like if one of my heroes was writing to Columbo.
Yeah, but I don't think Jonathan likes the Waltons.
Jonathan should.
Really?
Maybe not.
While Roy's out the room, Jonathan notes something odd about his speakers.
What was that?
Well, they're in the window, so they're a bit faded, but the fading is the wrong way round.
Describe these speakers.
They're animal-shaped, with the speakers in the faces.
Is it like dogs or something?
I thought they were cats, but they
Something.
could be some kind of
Animal. Could be an elephant for all we know.
I don't think it's not a lifelike representation. But yes, and it's kind of almost like the speakers in a space that's been carved out of these little wooden statues, but they match.
Yeah, Jonathan thinks that they're faded on the wrong side.
Yes.
So he asks Pilgrim about it but he states that they haven't been moved as far as he is aware.
Yeah, they were placed there for about 30 years ago for perfect balance.
Jonathan then suggests that they have recently been swapped around. He doesn't know why or what it means, but there's something there, a little marble is rolling around.
Point on the graph.
Back to the car. Jonathan still can't get over the fact that Pilgrim's a Waltons fan,
Maddie announces that they're off to Hog's Belly Farm.
which is where we arrive.
It's a commune.
Yeah, they're met by stereotypical New Age hippie types, and specifically by Toby Flowers, the son of Jacob and
I think it's the
Polly.
nephew.
Nephew, yeah. They've been expecting them, or certainly Maddie.
Yeah. You wonder, is he really their nephew? Is this one of those things where Jacob's the father of everyone in the commune?
I think
they all
Jacob-
just call him Uncle Jacob.
Yes, I think Jacob's the father of everyone. If you look into any of these cults. I mean, just on that, the Children of God cult, I think some famous, I mean, they were a really despicable
They're going to come for you.
organisation.
They'll come for you if you hear you saying this. They probably listen to every podcast to make sure that they're never defamed.
I'm not sure if they're still on the go.
That's the Scientologists, don't worry.
But yeah, some famous members who grew up there. The Phoenixes, Joaquin and all that type of stuff. River, Rose McGowan, I think, another.
She went to Charmed after the other one left, Shannon Doherty.
Anyway,
Shenanigans, you might even say.
well, worse than that.
Worse than
Worse
shenanigans.
than shenanigans, yeah.
Oof.
They go up to meet Polly and Jacob, who are, they're tree bonding. I mean, you would get arrested for this, and anyway, if you'd done this in the public park, you'd be arrested. And rightly so.
The note I've taken, this is effing mental.
Yeah, it's just,
They're caressing trees and themselves.
yeah, it's
Tree abuse.
Tree abuse, yeah.
I think the trees have got a right to protest.
Yeah, gross indecency.
There's an upsetting quote when the woman says, "This tree will get as much pleasure from this as you will." No, it won't.
Yeah, it won't.
It's a lie.
She also said the tree was asking for it.
It was dressed provocatively.
Didn't say no, did it? Didn't say stop.
Amusingly, my next note is they chat up an oak tree, but not in that way.
Yeah, there are a nice few lines of comedy as Maddie suggests that Polly came from barking, which I suppose is a double meaning. Barking mad and tree bark.
Yeah, but she's oblivious and she says, no, but not far. A different part of London.
Jonathan claims he has never seen anyone getting so personal with a knothole. Before Jacob asks him if he's ever been up an oak tree. And we cut to them up an oak tree.
Literally.
On the branches. And whilst they're up there, Jacob tells them that Pilgrim was their greatest benefactor, but that Francine has recently started to put the squeeze on that.
Well, I think you can get a bit of a measure of the cult from the fact they moved to be near his house. Jonathan says he joined it during a tour of Asia, I think, earlier in the episode. This guy's American, but yet the entire cult lives in a commune next to Roy Pilgrim's house.
Yeah, it's all about money and sex with
Trees.
this lot and trees, yeah.
Do you think the trees are involved in the family genealogy?
Family tree.
I couldn't say that. I went to say that. I was like, no, that won't work.
Anyway.
Yeah, they're concerned. There's clearly concern about Francine's involvement in Roy and her influence on Roy.
Yeah, and he tells Maddie that anything that can be done to help Pilgrim will result in a reward. Not a financial reward.
No, so not a reward. Her pick of the finest oak.
Yes. Certainly not a reward when you see what he has in mind. He vaults down and takes him somewhere.
They're building an ark.
A massive ark. It's like the Titanic.
Obviously this ark doesn't actually exist. They filmed the actors standing on scaffolding.
Yeah. Much like the ark in real life.
Yeah, that never existed either. No. You think back to 97. Obviously that's around the time Titanic came out. So there's visual. When I first read about this, I thought that's quite decent visual effects for the 90s. But no, that's probably about right.
Yeah, but remember, Titanic was probably had the biggest budget of all time. This is a TV
and this
show.
is not as impressive as Titanic.
No,
but
that's true.
what I mean is, yes, they would have had the technology to put in a wooden ark, but the creator advises you don't spend too long staring at that particular scene. Move on quickly.
Okay. This isn't the only one. Apparently there's
There's 4 more.
around the world. And if they help Pilgrim, they will be entitled to 2 seats each when the time comes.
Fantastic.
Jacob was played by Mel Cobb, born in 1947, not done much at all. He's been in Jack and the Beanstalk, Jerusalem, and The Return of Sam MacLeod. Polly.
Those don't sound like acting projects at all.
No.
So he's been in Jack and the Beanstalk at his local theatre, and he brought somebody back from somewhere?
I think so.
I thought he used to give him a lift from the train station.
Polly. She was played by Christine Moore. She has appeared in Coronation Street, Holby City, Heartbeat, Midsummer Murders, Dinner Ladies, The Grand, The Governor, Brookside, Once Upon a Time in the North, and The Bill.
It's the full set, almost. No Doctor Who for her.
Or Casualty.
Right.
Not the full set.
Okay.
A different set.
Yeah, she's not on BBC One much. This must be one of her big moments.
Where do we head next?
The bar.
Back to the pub.
Sheena and Maddie are talking this whole thing over. Don't know why Sheena's talking over.
Yeah, she continues to taunt Jonathan.
The speakers come up and Jonathan suggests that perhaps it was accidental that they were put in the wrong position.
Yes, he says perhaps they were replaced by identical ones for a period, and then when returned were put in the wrong place. And Sheena or Maddie says, well, who would do such a thing? And he says, a very honest burglars.
Was it just my DVD player, or was there a weird cut at the end of the scene where it kind of froze for a second?
Can't remember, it might just have been your DVD player.
I'm sure the listeners will let us know.
Hopefully. As he goes to leave, Maddie tells him that she is going to check out the other band members the next day and she'll keep him up to date. So he says his goodbye to the slightly smitten Sheena at this point. You can tell it. Yeah, oh yeah. You can. If you watch you're probably too busy taking notes, but she had a coyish little smile on her face.
So she's treating him mean to keep him interested in her.
That's what Jonathan likes.
Well, that's what she thinks he likes, maybe. Give him a puzzle to solve.
We're at Francine's house. Very short scene. We see her leave and ignore a call coming in from Pilgrim.
Yeah, I'm not sure the purpose of this scene. Perhaps a wee red herring slipped in here. Here's Francine acting weirdly.
So next day, we're at the rehearsal studio, and Maddie pretends to be a fan of the band and meets with guitarist Glenn, who essentially tells her that Pilgrim made all the money from the band. They were quite naive at the time.
Yeah, he thinks Roy's a money grabber, essentially. And at this point, some of his bandmates show up.
Yeah, so he has been practicing with other people who we assumed were the band.
Yeah.
But a chap called Tex enters with pizza, only to be informed that he's been replaced. Him and another couple of guys have been replaced by...
Well, at the pizzeria.
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Apparently the guy, Rob Jarvis, who played Tex, they loved him, and he's the one guy that they've used again in the show. He's in a different episode in season 2.
I'll speak about him in a second.
Okay. Good.
I quite liked what happened next. Maddie and Glenn go into the engineer's booth, and as they talk, you see the former and current band members fight with each other, but you can't hear anything.
Yeah, I mean, what Glenn does is he gets presumably a manager or a whoever, I wasn't sure that guy was, to handle it, and walks away.
Yeah.
Leaves them till fight it out.
So in the booth, he tells Maddie that Francine didn't seem Pilgrim's type, and that, in his opinion, the cops probably have the right man.
Doesn't have a high opinion.
Not at all. At first I wasn't sure if I was going to mention Glenn before I delved a little deeper, but I decided to anyway, just for the fact that his name is Hank, be careful here, Hank Lankford.
I believe that he and the fellow who plays the other band member shortly were recording artists together.
Born in 1940 as Samuel Hutt, he's a country and western musician, a lifelong communist. He toured a lot with Billy Bragg. He did a lot of anti-racism and pro-trade union work, and was infamously attacked on stage by some right-wing skinhead scumbags.
It's lucky you didn't mix those up. You wouldn't want to be anti-trade union and pro-racism.
No.
Like the Conservative Party.
Let's not go there. He had a band, Hank and the Wankfords, and they were nominated in 1984 for a Perrier Award at Edinburgh.
That is the festival, yeah.
He is also, or certainly was, the president of the Nude Mountaineering Society. Now, there are very few countries where you can, it's a chilly old game, that mountaineering. There's lots of those little pickaxes and crampons. You don't want to be doing that in the nude.
You know about they're getting a crampon.
No. Yeah, so,
Well, each to their own.
Tex, the sacked band member, was played by Rob Jarvis, as you mentioned. This is his first of 2 Jonathan Creek appearances. He has acted in Save Me. Recently, David Brent, Life on the Road. He's been in Vera, Doctor Who, Hustle, Luther, New Tricks, The Bill and Casualty.
I like Hustle.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite shows. Back at the commune, we meet the Yorkshire vet.
We do. Inside, the vet and Polly discover a dead Toby.
Someone suffocated him and then put a frog down his throat.
Well, that's what we're led to believe.
Absolutely.
Eyes staring, mouth open, very Silence of the Lambs. I think the fact they mention that later.
Yeah, I mean, the frog shows up when we cut to slightly later. The police are there and they remove it from his throat.
No, it's the paramedics, not the police.
The paramedics, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the Silence of the Lambs reference, isn't it?
Yes.
The placing of things in the
throat.
mouth.
Yeah.
Throat.
So yeah, they pull out this red-bellied frog, similar to the one we've seen in the White Room.
And Toby's death is barely mentioned again.
Yeah. Inconsequential character. Who cares about Toby?
Might have been murdered, but doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Not interested.
Back at the windmill.
Jonathan cleans and he catches a news report on the TV about this frog death at the farm. And just then, the door goes and we see a grinning, sultry, attempting to be sultry looking Sheena.
Yeah, but she's soaking.
Jonathan can have that effect?
Oh, you can't change the weather. It's
No,
the
that's-
rain that's...
Yeah, sure.
We cut across to Raxton Community Centre, where Maddie's shown up to hear a terrible ventriloquist.
Yes, it's a depressing children's puppeteer and he's performing this act to a less than impressed audience.
Yeah, this is actually a revised version of the act. The original joke that they had here was he would have a brontosaurus puppet, and then later on she'd go through his dressing room and he would still have this puppet on, but be holding a joint in the dinosaur's mouth because his hand comes up into the puppet and he'd be using it.
Okay, it still does sort of happen.
Yeah, except it didn't look anything like a brontosaurus, so they had to have the director dub over new lines in the performance.
In the changing room, she speaks with the ex-drummer of Edwin Drood, Martin Crowe, and we find out a little bit more about Pilgrim's tastes.
As you can see, performing is still my major source of income. I've got this reputation for instability, which I could never get my head around. Don't want Marty Crowe, no way. Don't want a drummer who urinates on the audience. Why not? Personal contact with the public, very important.
Roy Pilgrim, what type of women did he go for, would you say?
Let's just say he wouldn't look at you if he thought you'd had too many.
Drinks?
Birthdays. Closer they were to the legal limit, better he liked them. Good old Roy. In those days there were plenty around to like, believe me. That was then. His taste could have changed.
Right.
Crowe looks and sounds like a rapist.
You might say that. Others would argue. Not many.
We're back at the windmill. With thunder and lightning outside, Sheena gives John a gift.
I think she reveals her intentions quite clearly here to Jonathan with a very expensive looking gift.
Yeah, it's a magic book.
A classic text on medieval magic.
Did you look into that?
No. Is it a real book?
It is. Hocus Pocus, or The Whole Art of Legerdemain in Perfection by H. Dean. Legerdemain, have you heard of that before?
No, how'd you spell that?
As you pronounce it.
Oh, okay.
Legerdemain.
Oh, is demand not French for tomorrow?
You're just guessing now, aren't you?
I don't know.
You're making stuff up.
I have no idea.
In any case, she casually says that she just popped around to give him this book, and he responds incorrectly to the advances of a female by saying, "No, you didn't. You drove 35 miles out of London to do it."
He's basically calling her out for coming to see him.
He can't read women. That's fairly obvious.
Well, he either can't read her or he has read her and is not interested.
Yes, but even in that case, there are better, more appropriate ways
not
of
the most
letting people
tactful,
down.
yeah.
Yeah,
But then she did really annoy him previously.
true. But he is delighted with this book, and when he asks her what he owes her, She opens her coat and asks him what he wants to give her. I think then the penny drops.
He still kind of pulls out a wad of notes, and did she take them?
Maybe she has a sideline.
They mock Greg together.
They do. And she gets stuck into his sherry and offers a theory regarding the speaker setup.
Yeah, it's classic flirtatious behaviour, talking about something that the other person's interested in.
What's her theory?
That Roy was hypnotised by something that was played through the speakers.
Yes, to make him forget that Tracy was there. Now, Jonathan easily dismisses this before asking her why she is here.
Yeah, so either he doesn't trust his own reading of the situation and wants it spelled out for him in black and white, or he just wants to push her to the position where she leaves.
What happens?
She says she can't resist a puzzle, same as him.
Yeah, she admits she likes him and wants him to lecture her.
They go over the case. Jonathan's happy to do this at this point.
So, during the recap of what they know, he mentions the fact that Pilgrim apparently only slept during the night. Now, she suggests that he must be lying, but Jonathan counters with the question that we have discussed: why would you make up such a ridiculous lie?
Yeah, and there are lots of easy lies that he could have told that would be better alibis that nobody could counter.
So at this, she claims that it's impossible, before having a bit of a coughing fit. And what does he ask her?
Don't know.
Does she have a frog in her throat?
That'll be why I didn't write that down. It was so terrible.
Sheena was played by Caroline Lonck. Lonck. How would you pronounce that?
Lonck?
She has been in The Night Manager,
I like that.
Doctors, Holby City, Utrecht, Pie in the Sky, Prime Suspect, The Bill, EastEnders and Casualty.
The full set.
Is that the what we're classing as a set here?
No, the full set. So you have Doctor Who, Casualty and The Bill. That's a full set. Anything else? There's other common ones like Doctors.
Coronation Street and EastEnders.
EastEnders, Holby City.
Yeah.
But I think Casualty, The Bill and Doctor Who are the bingo set.
Okay.
Next morning, and at this time it's Sheena who has a huge breach of etiquette.
In what way?
Well, Jonathan's phone rings and she says she's going to answer it.
Yeah, why would... No!
It'd be like, no! Get away from my phone!
Yeah, no one answers someone else's phone.
No, it's not done.
I mean, even back then when it wasn't your mobile, which is far more personal, you still... You know, if you... That's it. You hardly know this guy. You've spent the night at his house or his windmill.
Yeah.
A reasonable person wouldn't feel comfortable or entitled to answer his phone.
So my note is, why is he letting her do this? But I don't think he's there.
No, he's not. He's somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's Maddie making this call, and she almost picks it up, but Jonathan at the last moment
arrives and handles it.
So Maddie tells him that her mind has been changed after talking to his bandmates and what she's learned about Pilgrim. She believes he now did it. She thinks they should ditch it.
He doesn't agree. He points to his book on frogs.
Yes, the Observer's Book of Frogs, page 197. Now we head over to Pilgrim's house and we see him being led away by the cops, who are ambushed by fruit-wielding, tree-dwelling Jacob and Polly.
Swampy.
Mr. and Mrs. Swampy, or Floppy. Now, the Swampies have scrawled on the police car a note on the windscreen.
Yeah, can't remember exactly what it says. At one point, one of them yells, "Vindictive fags." Now, is there a PC way of explaining away that?
Are you sure that's what was said?
That's what it sounded like to me.
Are you sure?
94%.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. Or in that context.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense in any way.
Francine shows up.
She does. She's here to collect a few things. And as Pilgrim is driven away, Jacob and Polly meet the arriving Jonathan and Maddie, and they head round to the back gate.
Inside the house, Francine's dotting around picking things up.
Yeah, furtive looking Francine.
Yeah, we're made to think that she's here to remove evidence of something.
She heads into the White Room to avoid cops at the front door, I think.
And as she turns around, there's a group behind her.
Who's in that group?
All the Flowerses are there, and JC and Maddie and the police.
And Pilgrim.
And Pilgrim himself, yes. He hasn't been taken away after all.
No, it was a ruse.
Oh.
So the cop admits an arrest is imminent and reluctantly accepts that Maddie has played a part.
Yes.
So he encourages her. Don't think he wants to, but he tells her, okay, go on with it.
At least we get an explanation for why this civilian is getting to explain how the crime was done to the criminal.
So Maddie starts, and it's a common tactic where we as the audience are directed in one...
Yeah, it's very Poirot-esque, isn't it?
Yeah. So we think that Francine is responsible, but no, she was just a disloyal cow, as Maddie might say.
Yeah, and it would have been very disappointing if it was Francine, because we didn't get any motivation for her to be doing this.
The real culprits are in fact Jacob and Polly. And what was the motive?
Though they were upset at Francine influencing Roy to put less money into the commune, so they wanted to secure their financial future by having him arrested for child stealing.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. At this point, Jonathan begins to offer an explanation as to what went on.
You saying this was like a trick? To set me up?
Like all the best tricks, it was blindingly simple, in theory, and fantastically elaborate in practice. But then to a bunch of people building an ark in their back garden, all things were possible. Staging the break-in and putting him out were the easy bit. An hour later he comes round to find he's trapped inside the White Room. Help! He remains fully conscious for the rest of the day, during which the only thing that comes through the door is a small red-bellied frog. At the same time, a teenage girl, not noted for a frog-like appearance, is seen entering the door from the outside by a bunch of boys at the back gate. There's no way it adds up, until you realise the whole thing was a classic piece of misdirection, which relied upon us all making one very false assumption, that in both versions of events, we were talking about the same door.
So Ian, can you explain what actually happened?
Yes.
Do so.
What has happened here is the Flowerses have... they've knocked out Roy and transported him whilst unconscious to the commune and put him in an exact replica of his own White Room, and obviously they've recreated everything except the speakers that they've had to borrow, leading to them going back in the wrong place. Meanwhile, Tracy arrives and is met by one or other of the Flowerses, who leads her off to the side and says there's been a change of plans, and presumably takes her to the commune and stores her somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Roy is left in this replica room until he falls asleep, and then with the help of some chloroform to make sure he doesn't wake up in transit, they bring him back to the real White Room. They replace anything that was borrowed, including the speakers, and leave him there to be found.
So I think we should, at this point, chat about some of the very obvious issues related to this plan. Firstly, how were they able to build this replica? How did they know what it looked like? They weren't friends with him. Have they been friends with him recently? Have they been?
Yeah, and also the way that Jonathan talks about the White Room, I imagine it's well known. They'll probably be well photographed.
You think?
Well, Jonathan says it's the White Room, the White Room.
Yeah, but that's
I
fine if
there'll
you.
be an iconic shot like a Vanity Fair shoot or something in there.
Yep, that's fine. However, that's not going to pick up like a mark on the wall somewhere. You might get one shot. It doesn't give you every. There might be a damp patch up in the wall or a scuff mark at one other point, and somebody might have spilled some wine. As you mentioned earlier, it's a cream carpet.
Yep.
So there's no way that you can guarantee that every little mark is going to be replicated.
That's true.
But that's actually the least of the problems I've got with it. Let's start at the beginning. He's out jogging with these dumbbells. How fortunate is it that he brings the dumbbells in with him, and places them down just behind the safe when he goes to inspect it so that they can pick it. Have they not brought their own implement to knock him out?
Maybe they did.
Why didn't they use it?
Maybe they liked the look of that thing better, or they thought it would be a delicious irony.
I don't think delicious irony is what you have in mind when you're about to, try and implement this crazy plan. Okay, so also, we mentioned at the start, really, really chancy. They didn't bring their own implement as far as we can tell, so they had to rely on him not just dropping it at the door, bringing it in, leaving it behind him, and then not getting... These are a couple of old hippies, right? If he's looks fairly fit, he's out jogging, if he hears him and turns around at any point, they're caught in the act attempted murder.
They're quite limber though, you saw him coming out the tree.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll give you that, but still, you can't... How would you know that he's not going to turn around and catch you and stop you? That's a nonsense. That's far too ridiculous. Moving on. Hitting someone over the head to knock them out, that could kill them. Yep. Now, if he's dead, you've not got this money unless they know that perhaps it's been left in a will, but in which case you would just kill him. You can't guarantee that blow will firstly knock him out fully, or if it does knock him out, won't kill him. And then, we didn't see any other chloroform or that at the initial point, so...
No, but then we didn't see him being transported at all the first time.
No, okay, I'll give you that. So perhaps they did use some sort of knockout substance to get him there. But that's a major problem. You might have killed him. And then where are you? Next. Okay, so what they're trying to do here is... This is their master plan. They want Francine to ditch him. To get out of his life.
Yeah.
They think that the best way of doing that is to make him look like a... child sex offending murderer. Yes.
I don't understand, what is their hope, that he'll keep giving them money even though he's in prison?
Exactly. So he's got other issues. If he gets convicted and charged, he's fighting it. All his money is going to go to legal expenses, I would have thought. So I don't understand. And then what they're going to do with the girl? Now, in a darker movie or a darker TV show, she's dead.
Well, they do explain this. They think that she would be converted into a member of the community.
Well, I suggest that maybe that would be the case, but they can't, again, you can't rely on that's just what will happen. She might talk. This whole plan, you'd have to kill her. Like, if this was going to work in any way, she's dead, and you're blaming, and the body would be found there. Okay, you can't just take someone and assume that, oh yeah, it's cool, we'll brainwash her. But even if you do, let's say it doesn't make any sense.
So what you're saying here is that we cannot judge the quality of a plan by whether it succeeds or not.
We certainly can't. But the point is that it's not a slapdash off the cuff. The plan hasn't just been spur of the moment in a fit of rage or anger where you can get away with being slapdash.
Yeah.
These are people who build arcs and have thought this out. They've got the skills and they went to the time and the care to recreate this room.
And how many folk were involved in that process?
Some people are talking here. It's one of the biggest nonsenses of a plan I have ever came across.
The fact they got as far as they did is remarkable.
Yeah. Oh, they're idiots. That is the main problem I've got here is, if he gets convicted of this, they think they're still going to get money from him. No! Are we missing something here?
I don't think so. And then, how did they know Maddie was going to show up?
What do you mean?
To leave the note on her door, on her car.
Yeah.
And with her having shown up, why are they inviting her in to investigate it further? Someone who's famously now been involved in a number of cases that got solved despite seeming impossible. Why would you invite that person in?
Well, you wouldn't. This is an example of an episode being enjoyable, but as soon as you look at it critically, I know it's a TV show and we shouldn't, but the previous episode, you say, well, okay, that would work. I can see how that could happen. I can see why you would want to do that. I can see the logic. There's no logic behind this. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, but the criminals being idiots doesn't make it a bad episode as such.
But it's inconsistencies because they're idiotic, but at the same time they've come up with this convoluted plan. The whole it's to an extent it's sophisticated. They're not just idiotic criminals, bumbling fools who try and hold up a bank with a banana and get stuck. What they've done it's inconsistent. In one way, they've got these skills and abilities, and it's cunning and it's ingenious. But anyone thinking it through,
they've overlooked a lot of the detail that they needed.
It just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, Maddie compliments him on their, she thinks, ingenuity. Suggests that Pilgrim would be convicted by his honesty. whilst they are able to leap to his defence and pretend to show.
So is their plan then that he'll be so grateful that they stood by him that he'll increase his donations?
Like I said, if you are fighting that type of case, you can only presume, even accepting the fact that she is brainwashed in this cult, she's disappeared, so the assumption would be that she's dead.
Yeah.
He is fighting a child killing.
Yep.
That is an expensive business to get involved in. He will have no money to go anywhere else.
I wouldn't have thought so.
And on top of that, I reckon a lot of his money is coming from royalties.
Yep.
So as soon as you're convicted of child murder, your income is drastically...
Yeah, they're not going to sell quite as many records, are you?
Yeah, that's getting played in no radio stations or no TV shows are using it, no adverts are using it.
Your tour doesn't sell out so fast.
It doesn't sell out very fast at all, no. So basically you have just cut off any future income, certainly from royalties.
Yeah.
Or, well, if you're in jail, you don't have any income anyway, other than sewing mailbags for tuppence an hour.
Interest on your vast fortune.
Yeah.
Picking ropes to make little thin fibres.
Anyway, at this point, Jacob dismisses Maddie as having a colourful imagination, whilst she states he has a colourful frog and produces the Observer's book.
Yeah, this particular frog has narcotic secretions, and the best way to get them out is to soak the back of the frog.
Indeed, and this explains the death of Toby. He wasn't murdered, he was just frog soaking.
Yeah, that's fortunate because nobody's been investigating his death in the interim period or
Nobody
mentioning it.
Cares about Toby. Toby can hunt himself.
Well, to be fair, Jacob has many other sons and nephews, in inverted commas.
They're all the same.
Yeah. It's noted that those frogs are not naturally occurring in the English countryside.
No, but they may be being bred at the commune. So Jonathan claims that unless the frog had travelled 15 miles to Pilgrim's home, the only other explanation is that Pilgrim was brought to the frogs. Now, I'm not sure about that either.
I find that dubious. If Pilgrim is a follower of this cult, he could easily have been at that commune and a frog jumped in the back of his car.
Yeah, we're assuming that perhaps Polly and Jacob have been in the White Room at certain enough times to be able to... Because how else are you going to recreate the whole room? So we're assuming that they're there. The same thing could have applied. They could have accidentally transported a frog, so I don't buy that either.
I agree.
In any case, we head over to Hog's Belly Farm.
Just before we head over to Hog's Belly Farm, they ask the Flowerses... I keep saying Flowerses. I should say the Flowers. To tell them where Tracy is, to save them difficulties, but they won't. So over at Hog's Belly Farm, the police are finding out for themselves.
Yeah, the cops converge on the farm. It's a raid, and they find lots of frogs, which are sampled by one cop.
What was that all about?
This is weird.
It's like, I found a frog. I'm just going to lick this.
Yeah, I've heard this is you can get a trip off this. Yeah, that's what I'll do
while I'm working.
Yeah, I won't pocket it for later.
No,
I'll take it right now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, before I write up the paperwork.
And it's on camera as well. So
yeah, good luck with that. Exactly. Yeah.
And they find the fake version of the White Room.
And what else do they find?
In the Ark, they find Tracy
stowed away, alive.
Yeah, she looks a bit grumpy.
And she'd scrawled Roy Pilgrim's name on the side of the boat. I don't know if that was just because she was a fan or if it was a sign in case she died.
Yeah, she was about to killed me.
Yeah. Although no, he didn't. She wouldn't have thought that.
Would she or would she not? Would she have thought this was part of Roy's plan?
No, I don't think so.
He was the one that wrote to invite her. She probably thinks this is all Roy that's done this, or he's involved in it.
We never find out.
In Maddie's car,
Jonathan asks about one of the obvious flaws that we discussed in the plan. What had they intended to do with Tracy?
Maddie's being a bit quiet and kind of off with Jonathan at this point, but she says maybe they would brainwash her and in a few years she'd just be one of the cult.
Yeah. She then thanks him for his help, but it appears slightly insincere when Jonathan accepts her offer of being cut in on her book deal, and things get even tenser as she stops at the station to drop him off.
You better hurry or you won't miss your train.
I better hurry or I won't miss my train. What sort of gibberish is that?
Oh, Jonathan, stop being clever. For once. And just go.
I get it. That phone call you made to Sheena just before we got in the car, she told you that she spent last night at my place and now you've got the hump.
Who's got the hump?
Because you think we slept together.
Jonathan, whether or not you and Sheena slept together is your business and her business. It's certainly none of my business. Quite frankly, I have no desire to even discuss the matter.
So if I said I'd rather poke red-hot needles down my fingernails than poke
It would be a matter of no consequence to me whatsoever. In fact, I find that extremely offensive and highly insulting to my best friend.
Right. I'll see you around then.
Yes.
She's obviously delighted at the revelation.
Yeah. Her face changes from anger to a sweeping smile, and she shouts out, "Yes." I like that ending.
It suggests that Sheena was a bit coy with her.
Yes, perhaps Sheena implied,
Yeah.
much like Maddie does herself, doesn't say yes or no, but implied, or certainly says that she stayed the night.
Maybe Sheena is embarrassed that she was rejected.
Rebuffed by Jonathan, who she has been insulting and degrading.
Or maybe she wasn't rebuffed by Jonathan and they're both just keeping it from Maddie because they've agreed not to tell her.
Yeah, perhaps Jonathan done the business and yeah.
Well, they might have agreed, yeah, it's a one-off thing, we're not going to do this again, but let's not mention it to Maddie, it'll break her heart.
Yeah, it certainly appears to be a one-off thing. It looked as if they were trying to set up this relationship between, it's Maddie's best friend, we never hear of her again.
So maybe it is what we've just said, maybe they did, and then Jonathan obviously agrees not to mention it and they just don't see her anymore.
Could be. And the credits roll, that's us.
Much like the opening credits, though, they roll over the picture.
So, I mean, like I said, I've got issues, we've got problems with this episode. I enjoy it at a superficial level, just watching it for a bit of fun, but I can't buy into it at all. I think the plan is a complete and utter shambles. And I don't mind a shambolic plan, but it's inconsistent.
Yeah, they've got so much detail in one area and then complete absence of awareness in another.
Yeah, so I just couldn't buy into it at all. But yeah, not a bad episode.
I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And you get more character development for Jonathan and Maddie here again. You get the more overt statement of her interest. You get the Sheena thing. Yeah.
At the very end there, we see this budding relationship.
Did you think it felt tacked on, or do you think that was a natural development?
No, I think I didn't feel it to be tacked on. I think over the previous episodes we've seen this. It's not something that's just sprang out of nowhere. Yeah, it's a natural development.
Fair enough.
We've covered quite a lot of trivia and chat throughout the episode. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that we've missed. I suppose, this is the first mystery with no murder.
Yes, there's a death, but it's not murder, and no one cared.
Director cameo.
Okay, where was that?
Well, if we chat about the production information,
There you go.
I'll drop that in. So, the 31st of May 1997 was the original air date, and again it was 59 minutes in length. Sandy Johnson was the director, born in Glasgow, 1953. This is his first of 10 Creek episodes.
A favourite.
He would seem to be. He is quite prolific. He has directed a number of episodes of Benidorm, Cradle to the Grave, The Spa, Love Soup, Roughnecks, The Comic Strip Presents, and this might interest you, Ian. I know you're a Monty Python fan.
Mm-hmm.
As an actor, I think he did lots of little bit parts, as directors often do. He was in the Holy Grail, Monty Python, The Holy Grail. He played a Knight of Knee. He was a villager at the witch burning and a musician at one of the weddings.
Well, those first two are two of the greatest scenes in that movie.
So there you go.
I wonder if he ever got his shrubbery.
He had a cameo in this episode. He was a paramedic who was there. We saw when the frog was pulled from Toby's throat.
And as we mentioned, he also did the voiceover for the ventriloquist act.
Did we mention that?
I did.
Okay.
Unless you've edited it out, in which case I now sound like an idiot.
Episode review.
Okay.
Motive.
Okay, to perpetuate the stream of funding coming from Pilgrim to the Commune.
Alibi.
Not involved at all.
Yeah, it was in the elaborate fingering of Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Clues. There wasn't. I'm trying to think back.
The speakers are the big ones.
Yeah, the speakers, the frog in the room and the frog at the farm. The ark itself, I suppose, hinted at something.
The intransigence of Pilgrim with his story.
The patronage of him, the financial provision. Not much else.
Not really.
The letter should have been discussed more, I feel, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, there's no indication they even recovered that letter from Tracy's mother.
That'd be one of the first things. The forensics should be all over that.
Or it could be that the police had it and they didn't share it with Maddie and Jonathan on account of them just being civilians.
Quite possibly. Next time, we have The House of Monkeys.
Season 1 finale.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get a season review.
We will, and what shall we do during that season review?
We're going to look at each of these cases and we're going to look at some kind of guilt or innocence based on parameters that are yet to be defined.
Yeah. If it went to trial.
Under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
In the absence of confessions.
In some cases we have to decide if it would even go to trial in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also we should maybe look at, would the police welcome Maddie and Jonathan's involvement in this case? We'll see how that works out, if that makes sense when we look at the actual mysteries.
We'll suck it and see. Well, that's us, Ian. You put your requests out early.
Okay, yeah, we'll see folk next time, couple of weeks.
We will. Cheerio.
Bye.